Hey everybody, welcome back to Going Live at 7:45. Seems there's none of you on yet. Oh, and you know what? Today I got ahead of myself. You know what? It was funny. I would totally be broadcasting from outside, except for the fact because there was going to be a huge thunderstorm, and apparently it completely passed us. So that's rather interesting. So how's my sound? Oh, there we go. Yeah. So pardon me. You know, it's funny. I got everything else set up, and then I completely forgot about the mic. Hi, how you doing? All right. So welcome aboard. There we go. Yeah. So I'm trying again. I'm always trying something new, right? So this is a little bit of a different setup, and I have the chat set up. So if you guys want to let me know, I know the audio is coming through, so there is that. If I'm too loud or whatnot, please let me know. And today we're going to be talking about widgets, plugins, and extensions, and what they are. Because quite frankly, there's a lot of mystique around them. There's a lot of like, what is that, and why would I care? And you know, it's a fantastic question. Actually, massive shout out to Deb, who actually brought this up. She asked about this one, and you know, she's absolutely right. There's so much there's so much about the plugins and the widgets that remain a mystery. So yeah, it's a great topic, and I'm really excited to dive in. So oh, and cool, we got 2 people logged in. Great, thanks for joining. So widgets, extensions, and plugins. Well, in a nutshell, these are kind of micro programs. They're mini versions of, like, they're very, very small, concise, single function programs. I mean, you hear the word widget, right? It's like, yeah, it's that thingamajig that you shove under, you know, that you shove under the piece of furniture, well, you know, to keep it stable. Well, you know, woodworkers call it a shim, but you know, get that widget over there. It's that little thing that does one thing, and it only works for certain things. And it's great to know about these widgets. So these widgets can do things as simple as, hey, can you tell me the weather? So it'll give you a live update on the weather, or stocks. So you can pick your, like, but it'll only show like 4 or 5. So you pick your 5 favorites, and that, you know, and they'll update every 20 minutes or so, or what have you. And widgets are usually in kind of their own section. Now, on smartphones, widgets have become a little more useful in that you could have a widget that pops up on your lock screen. So the screen before you're actually in the phone, but when you just kind of light up the screen, and let's say you're listening to music and it pops up a widget for the music. Well, then you can control your music without having to go in and unlock the phone and go through all of that. No, just right from the, you can have like notifications. So you can kind of have some widgets from the notification center, which, by the way, is its own widget. So that's kind of neat. But widgets can do all kinds of things like, no, widgets do one thing. Now there are all kinds of widgets. You can have everything from countdown till Christmas to, what are my stocks, to, I mean, you name it. There's all kinds. Hey, Deb, there's all kinds of them. Now, some might tell you, there are actually widgets that can tell you what the heat on your CPU is. So like the processor, how hot is your device inside? Temperature affects performance. So some people are really concerned with keeping it cool. So that could be one widget and whatnot. So that's what widgets are. Now, you know, maybe we'll kind of dive back into this, but I wanted to kind of talk also, I mean, on that note, a widget is not a whole program. It installs kind of in its own stack of widgets. So the widget is its own kind of thing. The computer recognizes all the widgets as one thing. They're not enough to make a whole program kind of thing. They really only do one function. So it's neat to kind of get into that. When it comes to your web browser, now this is interesting. When it comes to your web browser, there is absolutely no way to build everything into the browser. It's not possible. Actually, sorry, it would be possible. It would also make the browser a horribly slow, cumbersome, awful thing and experience to use. So what the smart companies did, because the old web browsers tried to do everything all built in. So what the companies started to get smart about, especially the standards companies, like Apple, Google, Mozilla, I think it's Opera who makes Opera. The smart companies decided that they're going to make their browser, and they're going to do what they do best. And then they're going to open up, they're going to leave space and a kind of ways to plug in these other features, these extra features. So any widget for your web browser is known as an extension by Google, an add-on on Firefox, and an extension in Safari. They sometimes get referred to as plugins as well. Now, this is true of other programs as well, but it's most common in web browsers. But it's also true of other softwares. So you might have something like, I use Final Cut Pro to edit videos. Final Cut Pro does a lot. I mean, like a lot. It really is an impressive program. But what makes it most impressive, when audio people, you audio engineers who use the digital audio workshops or the DAWs, they have tons and tons of plugins that do all kinds of wonderful things. Instead of trying to build it all in, you can add functionality per your use. So if you need something that corrects the camera distortion, some of those action cameras like GoPros and that, they give this kind of warped image because it's so wide angle, it just kind of warps the edges a bit. There are actually plugins that will correct that distortion, but not everybody needs them. So you only install what you need. It's almost digital Lego, but more functional. So we add features that we need. So, you know what? Let's get a little more practical with this. Hold on. I've actually, like I said, I'm always trying to step it up, right? So let's look at this now. If I go over to this screen over here, and let's make this nice and big. This is the Firefox add-ons, and I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to look through. So you'll notice that they kind of fall into different categories. Now, there are recommended extensions, right? These are things that are very popular. You'll notice that thousands of users, 15,000 users, 13,000 users. There's popular themes. Themes can be added in, so you can make your Firefox look the way you want. Privacy, so privacy extensions, no ads, secure browsing, privacy essentials, these kinds of things. Other popular extensions, video download helper, ad blocker. Ad blockers are huge. People love ad blockers. Password managers. These are just some of the examples of things that you would find. And you can actually go over here, for example, and change the way Firefox looks. But we could go over here and see more. Let's go and see more popular extensions. So by going here, you can see that there's a lot of things, and these are almost in their own app store. Oh, Google Translate. You can incorporate Google Translate so it'll automatically translate websites for you. You don't have to actually go out to Google Translate. Grammarly is a big one, so you can have you can use Grammarly directly online. You don't need to go to a particular app. If we look at Safari extensions, you see Grammarly for Safari, Honey for Safari. This is kind of a neat one. It's your smart shopping assistant. Anytime you go to check out, whenever you go to check out of a checkout online, Honey, this plugin, goes to that service and looks through their database and sees if there is anything there that matches a promo for what you're buying, or has a promo code that you can use to save money. 1Password, very popular password manager, Instapaper, Ghostly, OneBlocker. These are all different plugins that Safari does not add in by default, because not everybody would want them. The same is true of the Chrome Web Store, where you have like Evernote Web Clipper. If you happen to use Evernote, which is, of course, a great way of keeping notes. Oh, and what runs. But Evernote, for example, you can clip out of a website and dump it into one of your notes so you could see, or you could save parts of the site for later. Zoom Scheduler, colorful Rubik's Cube, so you kind of have, there are games, so there are web store games. These are things that you can play these web games directly in your browser. Unsplash for Chrome is a great way to find concept art, well, actually photography. Fantastic photography, stock photography for all kinds of purposes. Bitmoji, Grammarly, Speed Test, these are all integrated. These would all integrate with Google and makes either their full apps, like in the case of Microsoft Office over here, or you can have Google Hangouts, which has also kind of incorporated with Google Meet, but Google Hangouts can be incorporated into your web browser with this add-on here, just in case you happen to use that. So it is very neat to kind of get into that and see that there are these extra add-ins that you can keep building the functionality of your browser and go that much further. All right, another note that's kind of neat. Firefox. Firefox is not made by a company like Safari is made by Apple, right? That is their web browser. Edge and Internet Explorer are owned by Microsoft, and Google makes Chrome. Mozilla, on the other hand, is a company, but it is a it's not a company like the others in that it makes Firefox for the users, but also by the users. So what happens with Firefox is a public browser. Mozilla is more of a consortium. No, consortium is not the right word. An organization where they manage the production of this browser, but they don't hire full-time. Well, they have some full-time programmers, but what they do is each version of Firefox looks at what Firefox is, what features are current and relevant. It removes some of the older features and maybe that they don't work so well or whatnot. They make sure that they manage all the bugs and anything that comes up. And if there's something like this, like an add-on that is super, super popular, if it's virtually ubiquitous, they can choose to incorporate that into the core browser. So Firefox is a very complete browser. What differentiates Firefox is it is a tank. It is a great browser. It is very solid and super compatible with older sites. Because of their process, Google Chrome tends to innovate a little more. They tend to be right at the very edge. In fact, they always push the edge just that little bit. They really do push the edge. Whereas Firefox may not be quite as bleeding edge, but they are wildly compatible and usually have some features that other browsers may not. And that's okay. That's good. The other that gets interesting is Safari. Now, Safari is made by Apple, and it's kind of somewhere right in between. It's light and nimble, and it does have a lot of functionality, but it also does a lot on the security end, and they are very concerned with keeping things very secure and making sure that it is standards compliant, which basically means that when something is made and it follows the guidelines that everybody are supposed to follow. Some companies don't. I won't name any names, but those of you who use it, I'm sure you can guess, but I'm not going to name any names. Those who are not fully compliant, you'll notice that some sites don't work quite as well, or that they tend to be a little buggy, and that's because all the others, there is a consortium, the World Wide Web Consortium, or the W3, that define the standard for all of this. And that's where these kind of plugins came in. The browser said, we can't do everything, so let's focus on what we do best and let other people add in. We'll have that ability to add. I hope that makes sense. Oh yeah, on the subject of widgets, you can get widgets on a computer, on smartphones and tablets and all of this, and they really are small single function. They're plugins for your smart device. If you guys have any questions, you know how I love questions. You guys know I love questions, right? Doesn't matter if it's on topic or not, I love questions. So what I'm going to suggest here is, if you have any questions after the show and you're watching this kind of after the fact, there's the email on screen, or by all means, put it in the comments. I do actually check the comments every day before going on, and I want to see if there are any questions. I get excited when I get a question. I like questions. And if you have a topic that you'd like to see me cover, I would love to know. So please, by all means, shoot me an email or a line or whatever you like. I'm pretty reachable. And it seems like I've got no questions at the moment. So you know what? Let's cut it off for tonight. And I will be back tomorrow live at 7:45. Hopefully, I'll be able to do this outside. Oh, what a fantastic question. Deb always comes up with the good questions. I like this. Do widgets burn a lot of battery power? Fantastic question. Not typically. What widgets do, however, they do burn some battery, and some could burn more than others. A widget is more often than not checking up on data. Something that reads the internal temperature of your phone or your CPU usage or RAM usage is constantly updating, which is making your phone or your computer work harder. So yes, that will consume a little bit of battery. You will notice that will be a notable kick. Now, I'm not talking drain your battery in an hour, but you will notice some battery drain with that. Other things that, like, check the weather every, say, hour or so, not so much. It's generally pretty benign. It really depends on how active that widget is. And yes, to your point, also ask, so does that use a lot of data? So here's the beautiful part. A widget already knows how to display, so it only needs the data, right? So if I turn to you and I say, when I ask the weather on the internet, it has to load an entire web page and how it's styled and all the info to get that it is whatever degrees, 13 degrees, or if you're in the States, 52 degrees or whatever it is. It has to load quite a bit, whereas the widget only goes for the temperature because it knows already how to display it. So it does use some data, but usually widgets are very, very efficient on data. Where widgets are less efficient on data is when they are pulling lots of information on, like weather, not so much, but something where you might have, hey, can you pull up the news headlines every 5 minutes? Or the tech news headlines every 5 minutes. That means that every 5 minutes, it's going and pulling a little bit. It's still not a lot of data, probably only about, let's say, 30 kilobytes per second. But if I ask you to give me 15 or 10 cents, here's 10 cents. If I ask you to give me 10 cents, 6 times an hour, day over day over day over day, it starts to add up. So it's kind of that trickle effect. It's very, and what a fantastic question that is. Yes, widgets could use a bit of data, but really, because they're so efficient on their data usage, they don't tend to hog the data like an app might. Something, for example, like if you obsessively run internet speed tests, that could consume a fair amount of data. So that's a really good example of one that would really kind of, and that'll take a bit of your battery too, because it's sending and receiving a lot of packet information, small packet information. But if you're doing it obsessively, that could get very interesting. What a fantastic question. I love those questions. Oh, this is a great question. If you're roaming, should you shut your widgets off? If you're roaming in the States, I tend to like to turn my cellular data off when I'm roaming around in the States. Although because if you're using something like a Roam Like Home, where you're charged for data usage for every day that you use it, then yes, you would want to turn your widgets off, or at least the widgets that use data. Now, instead of getting all, persnickety about it, just, you're right, turn them off. Actually, your best bet when roaming is, as much as possible, turn off the cellular data. That doesn't mean you can't receive phone calls. You can still make and receive phone calls without cellular data. Those work on a different system. But yes, turning off your data turning off your data for the widgets would be a good idea when you are roaming in foreign countries. If you're roaming around home, don't worry too much about it. If it won't bust your, even if you have a very small data plan, it won't bust your data plan by any far stretch, unless, of course, again, you really obsessively check something that's a little more, a little more data heavy. Yeah, those are great questions. I love those questions. Fantastic questions. Guys, thanks for tuning in. I'm going to leave you guys for tonight. Hit me up with your questions in the comments, or send an email if you want. For those, most of you know me, so call me, text me, hit me by messenger, whatever you like. Send in your questions. I love to get your questions on air. I know I have my themes, but I really like to see what you guys come up with. All right. Thanks so much. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow night. Have a great evening.